Are we really living in the last days like Jehovah's Witnesses have been proclaiming for over 100 years? We'll dive into it.
I'm changing my life and I won't look back ever again.
So what time period would you rather be living in? So the witnesses teach that we are living in the last days, right before Armageddon, and that these last days are the worst days of all human history, the worst period of time you could possibly live in. So we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to look at their propaganda, both on their online videos and in their literature.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
Take a look at these subheadings. These are some screenshots I took of articles from jw.org. These are just a few of many articles in no particular order that they have published over the years. It would take me too long to show you all of them. You can see how they really drill it into the minds of their believers about this time of the end fear tactic. It's called brainwashing, and remember, this is all shared with the JW children as well. It's very sad. I subjected my children to this fear-mongering as well, and I'm not proud of it. They also have a whole cartoon series for the kids that I'm saving for another video. These articles focus on how awful the times are. They talk about violence, earthquakes, famines, wars, pestilence, worldwide upheavals, attitudes of people, social and moral breakdowns. Their solution is to study with and become a Jehovah's Witness. I will tackle that subject in another video about Armageddon. Now, it's true, sadly, all these things do happen, but I'm here to remind you, they always have. Now we're going to talk about this book, The Harp of God, published in 1924 and written by J.F. Rutherford, the second president of the Jehovah's Witness organization, and the one who claimed to be directed by God, just as the organization does today. Now, at the bottom of this book, it says, proof conclusive that millions now living will never die. Take a look at that. They're all dead now. So we're going to talk about the kooky things found in this book. First of all, this book, again, published in 1924, claims that we were in the time of the end since 1799, and it uses examples of modern technology in 1924 to prove we were in the last days. Follow along with me while I read from The Harp of God, starting on page 233. Before 1799, the means of transportation were such that a man could travel only a short distance in a day. He must go either by a vehicle drawn by horses or oxen or afoot, and when he would cross the sea, he must go in a sailboat that made little progress. In 1831, the first locomotive steam engine was invented. Such wonderful progress has been made in this regard that now one can travel through almost any part of the earth at a rapid rate upon a railway train. Later came the electric engines and electric motor cars and gas engines, and now there is a tremendous amount of travel in every part of the earth. It is no uncommon thing for one to travel at the rate of 75 and 100 miles per hour, and particularly is this true by means of a flying machine, which is a very modern invention. Moving on to the next slide. God's prophet designates this same time as the day of God's preparation. In Nahum 2:1-6, the prophet records his vision of a railway train traveling at a high rate of speed. as another evidence of the day of preparation for the establishment of Christ's kingdom. In 1844, the telegraph was invented, and later the telephone. These instruments were first used with wires, and by electricity, messages were conveyed throughout the earth. But now by later invention, wires are dispensed with and messages are flashed through the air by the use of instruments all over the earth. Moving on to the next slide. This is page 234 now. This great increase of knowledge and the tremendous running to and fro of the people in various parts of the earth without question is a fulfillment of the prophecy testifying as to the time of the end. These physical facts cannot be disputed and are sufficient to convince any reasonable mind that we have been in the time of the end since 1799. Next slide. Page 235 of the Harp of God. It was in the year 1874, the date of our Lord's second presence, that the first labor organization was created in the world. From that time forward, there has been a marvelous increase of light, and the inventions and discoveries have come to light since 1874, as further evidence of the Lord's presence since that date, as follows. Next slide. Adding machines, aeroplanes, aluminum, antiseptic surgery, artificial dyes, automatic couplers, automobiles, barbed wire, bicycles, carborundum, hope I'm saying that right, cash registers, celluloid, correspondence schools, cream separators, darkest Africa, disc plows, divine plan of the ages, dynamite, electric railways, electric welding, escalators, fireless cookers, gas engines, harvesting machines, illuminating gas, induction motors, linotypes, match machines, monotypes, motion pictures, North Pole, Panama Canal, pasteurization, railway signals, Roentgen rays. I'm probably butchering that, but when I look that up, that's referring to x-rays. Shoe sewing machines, smokeless powder, South Pole, submarines, radium, skyscrapers, subways, talking machines, telephones, typewriters, vacuum cleaners, and wireless telegraphy. Probably butchering that one too.
Keep on the watch. That's what Jesus told his disciples after describing the events of the last days. How long have you been keeping on the watch? We are certainly experiencing critical times, hard to deal with.
Now let's look at the other side of things. Now, are there bad things going on in the world? I think that gets a big duh. Of course there is. There always has been, unfortunately. But there's a lot of really good positive things going on that in this unique time period that we're also going to take a look at. Take a look at these charts showing life expectancy at birth. U.S. life expectancy at birth was 39 years old in 1800, 49 years in 1900, 68 years in 1950, and 70 years old today. The average newborn today can expect to live an entire generation longer than his great-grandparents could. The average American now retires at age 62. 100 years ago, the average American died at age 55. Enjoy your golden years. Your ancestors didn't get any of them. Now look at this chart. Look how much lower the infant mortality rates are. This is fantastic. And wow, look at this, the maternal mortality rate chart here. I sure would much rather be giving birth this day and age, wouldn't you? 2% of American homes had electricity in 1900. Even by 1950, close to 30% of American homes didn't have electricity. It wasn't until the 1970s that virtually all homes were powered. Think of all the conveniences we have thanks to electricity. Apps like Google Maps is free. If you think about this for a few moments, it's really astounding. It's probably the single most useful piece of software ever invented, and it's free for everyone to use. If you are African American, I'm pretty sure you would rather be living today than a slave in the 16 to 1800s. Almost a century later, resistance to the lingering racism and discrimination in America that began during the slavery era led to the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which achieved the greatest political and social gains for Black Americans since Reconstruction of our society. In 1900, African Americans had an illiteracy rate of nearly 45%, according to the Census Bureau. Today, it's statistically close to zero, and although racism still exists, African Americans are thriving now and have all the same opportunities as everyone, including attending a university, buying a home, holding a political office, and so on. Although this chart doesn't show it, there was a spike in famine during the pandemic, but overall, people dying from famine globally declined. Let's not forget women's rights have come a long way. We can travel the world like no other time in history. We have the luxury of indoor plumbing. And if I found myself in a hospital, I would feel much more comfortable in a modern hospital than one of many years ago. In the end, most of us have a better life than most kings and pharaohs had thousands of years ago. So, in closing, this is why Jehovah's Witnesses are considered a doomsday cult. People, don't let any group keep you in fear. It's just a way to control you. Instead, let's put positive vibes out into the world as much as we can. And until next time, I'll see you later.
I'm changing my life and I won't look back ever again.